Help! We need builders desperately. We have been underbuilt here for the last decade, and I'm begging you, we need you to come here. But you need to understand a few things before investing in North Idaho. I'm going to break it down for you right now. Welcome back, Lindsay Allen here. I'm going to dive into some information about building and developing in North Idaho, but first, make sure that you subscribe and turn on notifications so that you can stay apprised of all the things there is to know about the North Idaho real estate market and living in North Idaho. So let's get into it. I have a background because I spent a few years working as the assistant director of operations for a residential developer here in North Idaho. We were building 300 plus homes a year, and I was a project manager essentially for them, conducting builder meetings, working with our drafting department, our production department, to make sure that we were building efficiently, keeping things in the pipeline, not letting things slip through the cracks. So I have a very good understanding of what it means to develop land here in North Idaho. And you need those resources. If you're thinking about building here in North Idaho, you gotta contact me so I can make sure that you are avoiding certain mistakes and you're privy to certain information that's gonna help you along this process. So let's get started. First and foremost, we have a major housing deficit in North Idaho. This is also part of the reason that we've seen such skyrocketing appreciation, and we've been dubbed the hottest housing market in the United States at one point in time. Now, unfortunately, it's created a number of problems. We are in a major deficit in terms of inventory and housing supply. Now, traditionally, new construction makes up the gap between what's available for resale and demand. New construction fills that gap. Now, after the 2008 recession and housing crash, builders who speculated quite significantly on dirt and spec homes were underwater, and many of them went through bankruptcy. Major developments were being foreclosed, and in fact, at the company I worked for, we kind of stayed alive during this recession area because we had a good relationship with the banks, the owners did, and so they were also very solvent. They were able to pick up a lot of this dirt for pennies on the dollar, which allowed them to continue to build and offer products, but it was also not at the pace that it was prior to that housing bubble bursting. So much more speculation about the health of the market and much more trepidation in terms of trying to stay up to date with demand. Now, fast forward 10 years, 12 years, we're here in 2022, and one of the problems we're seeing is that we have this housing deficit. Now, between Spokane and Coeur d'Alene, between the two communities, we've probably underbuilt by 40,000 homes in the last decade. Now, you could probably imagine how our housing market would be if we hadn't underbuilt that. We would have much more supply, therefore housing would probably be slightly more affordable. So one thing we're seeing is that we've severely underbuilt homes, like I just said. The estimates on growth in the next 8 years show that to meet the demand and kind of get on top of this problem or kind of crawl out from the rut that we're in the next 8 years, by the year 2030, we would need to be building nearly 2,100 homes a year. That's very ambitious, and we unfortunately do not have the number of builders here that we need to produce that many homes. You know, the factory can only produce so many widgets, and our factory right now has a finite number of builders who can only produce so many homes. So it's going to be a challenge, which means if you're a builder or you're a developer, we need you. We need you here to help fill that gap and to help fill that vacuum of missing inventory. Now, there's a couple things that you should probably be aware of. First and foremost, when you're building in North Idaho, one of the big things that you're going to come up against right now is a strong anti-growth sentiment. Now, the community feels that if we limit the people that are coming and we stop annexation and we stop approving subdivisions, that we'll get a handle on this inventory problem and this housing crisis that we're seeing here in North Idaho. Unfortunately, though, that's a misnomer, because if we continue to limit supply and we continue to inhibit the free market from addressing this problem, the number of homes is only going to shrink and the growth is going to continue to expand. And again, supply and demand, we find ourselves in that situation where it's only going to worsen the housing crisis. So first and foremost, if you're thinking about building here in North Idaho, Coeur d'Alene, Post Falls, Rathdrum, Athol, be prepared to meet the anti-growth sentiment. It's not for the faint of heart at all to be a developer or a builder here in North Idaho. If this is something that you do well and you've got the financing and you've got the money to make this happen, and you don't care about the haters, we need you. We definitely need you. So next thing is where to build. Currently in Coeur d'Alene, we're landlocked. I know Coeur d'Alene's kind of the hub of everything here in North Idaho, and it's the most searched place for people coming in from out of town, but Coeur d'Alene is landlocked, and so there's not a lot of space to expand or grow out. So we say a lot in Coeur d'Alene, we can't grow out, we've got to grow up, which means we're seeing some more high-rises downtown. We need to create more density as well. So know that in Coeur d'Alene, you're not going to find big swaths of land where you can, put single-family homes. To do that, you're going to have to go to areas like the Prairie, which would be Post Falls, Rathdrum, some areas in Athol and Hayden as well. Those are the areas where we've got the space to kind of expand and provide that single family housing, where everyone can kind of get a yard and a driveway, and you've got the parks and the neighborhoods and things like that. But again, a lot of that requires annexation or subdivision, and that's a process and it can take some time. So be prepared for this to be kind of a long-term process. It's a long game, not a short game. Okay, another thing that you need to know too is that there are certain areas in our North Idaho community where density is not possible. So for example, we have an aquifer that this kind of large prairie area in Rathdrum and Athol, all that land sits above an aquifer. And there are regulations through the DEQ and through entities in our community that do not allow subdivision into lots smaller than 5 acres. And that's meant to protect the aquifer. So if you're thinking about density, there's definitely certain areas that are gonna completely be off the table for you. If you're looking for density, you're going to want to look closer into the city limits of Post Falls, Rathdrum, and even some pockets in Coeur d'Alene where you might be able to put in, missing middle housing, townhomes, cottage homes, things like that, which we'll get to in a minute. So also, for example, Spirit Lake is a smaller community. It's got a lot of draw. It's got this cute little downtown. It's got the lake. It's kind of got some space as well, but they put a moratorium on building multiple times because the infrastructure could not keep up with the amount of growth. And they said, sorry, we're not issuing permits for new homes in the next year or 2 years or until we get this updated, because they're trying to make sure that everything is done properly. So again, you got to utilize an agent who's kind of familiar with these areas and who knows what's going on, because you do not want to get stuck trying to buy acreage and then finding out you can't do with it what you wanted to do with it, and then you're stuck with it. So make sure that you reach out and you're familiar with these areas and you understand how dense you can get. So next thing, like I said, we have this anti-growth sentiment here in North Idaho. It's not uncommon for people to come to planning and zoning meetings or city council meetings and put up a big fight against annexation or against subdivision approvals. So if it's a larger development, be prepared for that. If you're a smaller builder kind of doing, a couple of lots here and there, you probably don't have to worry about this. And again, we need all types of builders. We need big builders, we need one-off builders, we need small mom and pop small mom and pop entities as well. But the bigger you are and the bigger the project and the more resources it's going to require from the community, the harder the fight is going to be. So be prepared. Like I said, it's not for the faint of heart. But if you have been through this and you're familiar with the process and you're not afraid of the pushback, this is a great community. We need more stuff here. So next thing is creative housing. We are in need of, in certain communities, especially like places like Coeur d'Alene, where, like I said, we can't go out. We've kind of got to go up or create more density. Seeing really creative housing. We call this missing middle housing, which means it's not super dense multifamily apartments or workforce housing, but it's also not the single family homes that take up more space and inhibit density, which again, if we have a little bit of density, that means more inventory, that means a little bit of relief on the upward pressure of pricing. One thing that we see in this core downtown area, that everyone is very familiar with in Coeur d'Alene, or around the resort till about 11th Street, is the mixed use and a residential buffer, and then we've got East Sherman all the way from 11th Street to the freeway. Now, what we see is a big push for more missing middle housing. Missing middle housing is like cottages with courtyard areas, smaller homes with nice amenities and courtyards. We see maybe townhomes or fourplexes that are designed really well, that have a lot of character and a lot of curb appeal. We also see the need for mixed use, which, you might have some commercial space on the bottom, a coffee shop, a brewery or a pub, or, a little retail space, and then up above, some living space or condos. We need that creative housing in and around our community to kind of meet the demand, but also, I believe too, with a lot of people moving here from communities that are larger, that have these things, they come here and they say, why don't you have stuff like this? We see this all the time in Seattle or Portland or Los Angeles. And that's one thing that we can do here more of, especially in areas like Coeur d'Alene where we don't have a lot of room to grow out. So if you're that type of builder and you've got some ideas and you've got some creativity, we welcome that. And make sure you touch base with an agent like myself to help guide you and direct you into those areas in which those products are the right fit, the highest and best use. So next thing we have is, depending on where your permitting municipality is, be prepared for a lengthy permitting period. Sometimes, the city of Coeur d'Alene or city of Post Falls are going to move permits for houses through a lot quicker. But the county, for example, because it's such a large entity or such a large geographic space, and there's so much growth outside of city limits in the county, they have been inundated with business. And so if you're trying to build in the county, you could be 6 months or more from submission of your permit to actually issuance of that permit. So, you've got to account for the time it's going to take from submission of the permit to actually being able to break ground. Quite a bit of time in there. And what's fluctuating in between there? The cost of supplies, the availability of materials, as we all know. So you got to be conscientious of that. Which municipality is going to be issuing that permit, and making sure you're taking into account that time frame in the overall scheme from start to finish. So from conception to certificate of occupancy, essentially. Next thing to understand or to know as a developer here is that we definitely have some shortage of skilled labor. And I don't say this to inhibit or scare you from coming here and potentially thinking about building or developing, but it's a reality of our market. I don't want to paint it to be something that it's not. The correct expectation is to understand that, again, we have a finite number of contractors contractors and subcontractors here in town, everybody uses, the same HVAC company or the same electricians and the same plumbers, and they're spread so thin and their crews are only so big and they can only recruit so many skilled laborers. They're also confined, they're a bottleneck in the process, and certain subs are going to be more difficult than others to find. You're going to have probably a harder time getting a framing crew in than you will an electrician or an HVAC subcontractor. So some of these things are going to take longer. You're going to have to account for that on your calendar, how long things take and how far out people are booked. So just be conscientious of that. Those are issues that we see happening in the building market today. The next thing that we want to be wary of is the financing and carrying costs. A lot of people utilize financing, construction loans, and those carrying costs, as interest rates go up and as building times are dragged out, those carrying costs eat into your profit. You do not want to come into this budgeting for a 9-month build in the county, because it's actually probably going to take you closer to 18 months from start to finish. So you've got to be wary, you've got to be conscientious of the financing carrying costs and how that'll affect your profitability because of the length of time it takes to build. So again, working with an agent who's here in town, who understands all this stuff, and who is apprised of kind of the permitting municipalities and how long they're taking, we can help you and guide you along and be a good resource for you to make sure that you're playing this out correctly and not kind of shooting yourself in the foot. Okay, last but not least, and I think this is incredibly important, you want to make sure that you vet the people that you're working with, because not everyone who's a real estate agent in town is aware of all this stuff. They don't know where the permitting municipality is, or who's working there as a planner, or who the lenders are that can provide financing for you for especially for larger projects, who the surveyors and engineers are, and who the subcontractors are that can help you with these jobs. If you're new to this area, you don't want to get hooked up with someone who delivers a bad product or a bad service, especially from a warranty standpoint. Many builders obviously provide warranty, and if you pick an HVAC contractor that provides crappy work, or who won't stand behind their product, or who has a bad reputation, but you didn't know that, it can screw you over, because I've seen it time and again with builders. You could have a builder with a great reputation, but they hire the wrong subcontractor and everything goes downhill from there. And then once people live in that house and they continue to have problems with it, the last thing they're doing is speaking highly of you to their family and friends. So it affects your business. So make sure that you connect with a professional real estate agent, professional engineers and surveyors, lenders, title and escrow. That's also a very big one. You want to have these resources, and you want to have people that know how to do their job. So make sure you connect with trained professionals, and I can help you with that. So again, we need builders here in North Idaho. If you're thinking about building or developing, get in touch with me. I am a great resource for many of your questions. I'm happy to make connections for you and give you names and numbers of people that can help you. So if this appeals to you or you have questions, make sure to email me, text me, throw a comment down below. Happy to help you guys out. Again, we need you guys. We look forward to also bringing in a different flavor of builder, a different aesthetic of product. So if you have any questions, let me know. Happy to help. You guys have a great day. Make sure to subscribe, follow along for everything North Idaho. See you next time.